Relon Voss moved quickly through the cold corridors of the research station, his boots echoing softly on the metal floor. The lights above flickered, casting long shadows that seemed to crawl along the walls. Every second counted. His mission was simple: get in, download the research data, and leave without anyone noticing. Any distraction could cost him his life or worse, the safety of the galaxy. He had trained for years to follow orders without question, to act without hesitation. And yet, as he rounded the corner toward the final chamber, a strange sound stopped him in his tracks. It was soft at first, almost a whisper against the hum of the station's machinery. A small, high-pitched squeak that did not belong to any machine he knew. Relon frowned and slowed his pace. His instincts told him to ignore it. Protocol was clear. No interference. Every second he wasted could trigger alarms. Still, curiosity, and something deeper, a pull he had never felt before, drove him forward. He found her curled in a small, broken containment pod. A tiny dragon hatchling, no bigger than a human child's hand, trembling with cold. Her scales shimmered faintly under the emergency lights, and her golden eyes blinked up at him, wide and full of fear. Relon knelt slowly, careful not to scare her. He could see she was injured. One wing was bent at an odd angle, and her tail lay stiff and motionless. The data he had come for suddenly seemed distant, almost unimportant. Relon's mind raced. His training, his orders, the rules of the council, all of it told him to leave. Dragons were classified as dangerous. They were weapons of war, living organisms that could not be trusted. Many humans had lost their lives simply by interacting with them. But the hatchling was helpless, and something inside Relon refused to turn away. He glanced at his watch. 5 minutes until extraction. 5 minutes to follow orders and do what he had always been told was right. Or 5 minutes to make a choice that would change everything. He swallowed hard. "Come on," he whispered, reaching out slowly. The hatchling flinched at his shadow but did not run. Her small body seemed to sense his hesitation, her golden eyes locking onto his with an unspoken plea. Relon knew in that moment that leaving her would haunt him forever. He could not do it. Relon carefully lifted her into his coat, wrapping her against his chest. She shivered, tiny claws pressing into his fabric, but she did not cry. The warmth from his body seemed to calm her. He adjusted the coat, making sure she was secure. Every second he spent with her increased the risk of detection. Alarms could sound at any moment, and reinforcements could arrive before he even reached the shuttle. But he could not leave her. Not like this. Not ever. He moved toward the exit, keeping his head low. The station was eerily silent, as if it held its breath, waiting to see what he would do. Relon's heart pounded in his chest. Every step felt like walking on a knife's edge. He imagined the council's faces when they found out he had disobeyed orders. The mission would be considered a failure. His career would be over. Yet, looking down at the tiny creature nestled against him, he felt something he had never felt on any battlefield. Purpose that had nothing to do with victory or medals, something deeper, something human. The corridor ended in a heavy blast door, the exit to the shuttle bay. Relon paused, listening. No alarms yet, no sign of detection. He had seconds to make a decision. He knew that once he went through that door there would be no turning back. The mission would be lost, but the hatchling would live. He took a deep breath and pushed the door open, the hatchling safe against him. The shuttle bay was empty, dimly lit with rows of small maintenance drones moving silently along their tracks. Relon ducked behind a stack of supply crates, scanning for security drones. His pulse raced. One wrong move and the hatchling's life, and his own, would be over. He crept toward the shuttle, every step calculated, every movement careful. The hatchling nuzzled closer, sensing the danger, and for a moment Relon allowed himself a small smile. She trusted him. As he reached the shuttle, he saw it waiting, engines humming softly, ready for immediate launch. Relief washed over him, but it was brief. A faint red light blinked on the security console. He had triggered something. The countdown had begun. Relon cursed under his breath, but he did not hesitate. With one swift motion, he lifted the hatchling higher in his coat and sprinted the last few meters. The shuttle door closed behind him with a metallic clang, sealing them in. Relon dropped to his knees, catching his breath, while the hatchling nestled against him, warm and trembling. He looked down at her small, shining eyes and realized he had no regrets. He had chosen compassion over orders, life over protocol, and in that choice, he had found something no mission could ever teach him. The shuttle lifted off, engines roaring softly against the emptiness of space. Relon stared out the window at the research station shrinking behind them, its lights fading into darkness. He did not know what awaited him, whether the council would punish him or whether the galaxy would survive his failure. But he did know one thing: the little dragon in his coat had changed everything. And somehow he knew that whatever came next, it would be because of that small, fragile life he had chosen to protect. For the first time in his life, Relon felt the weight of true responsibility, not for a mission, not for a title, but for a life that depended entirely on him. And as the stars stretched ahead, endless and unknown, he whispered softly, "We'll be okay. I promise." The hatchling nuzzled him in reply, and Relon understood that whatever the future held, he had already made the choice that would shape it. One small act of courage had become a turning point, and neither he nor the galaxy would ever be the same again. Relon Voss woke with a start, blinking against a soft light that was nothing like the harsh glow of the research station. He tried to sit up, but his body felt strange, heavier and weaker than he remembered. A gentle warmth pressed against his chest. He looked down and saw the small dragon hatchling, no longer trembling but curled comfortably in his arms. Its scales were brighter, shimmering softly, and its golden eyes blinked slowly at him. The sight made his heart race with relief. She was alive. He tried to speak, but his voice came out hoarse and shaky. He could feel the memory of the mission, the choice he had made, but something was wrong. The room he was in was unfamiliar. It was not a medical chamber, not the shuttle bay. Smooth walls, soft lights, and a wide window revealed a view of planets and stars unlike any he had ever seen. Ships moved gracefully in the distance, but they were sleek and unlike any military craft he remembered. A calm voice interrupted his thoughts. "You are awake." A figure stepped forward, tall and clad in a simple, white uniform. The face was kind, human but unfamiliar. "I am Commander Lyra Thane. You have been asleep for a very long time. Decades have passed, Relon Voss." Relon's mind froze. Decades? That could not be. He had only just left the station. The hatchling pressed closer to him, and he realized she too had grown slightly, though not fully. "Decades?" he whispered. How is that possible?" Commander Thane gestured to a holographic display that shimmered in the room. Stars, planets, and fleets of ships rotated slowly. "When you saved the hatchling, you altered the course of history. Your choice proved that dragons were sentient and capable of trust." The galaxy responded. Humans were no longer seen as expendable soldiers, but as mediators and caretakers. Entire conflicts ended because of your action. Time moved differently for you in stasis while the galaxy healed and changed. Relon stared at the display, trying to understand. All those years had passed, yet for him it felt like moments. He looked down at the hatchling. She lifted her head, eyes filled with something he had never seen before: recognition, understanding, and loyalty. He realized that this small creature, the one he had chosen over duty, had been the spark of everything. The door slid open and other humans entered, smiling warmly. "Welcome back," they said. "You have been long awaited." Relon struggled to stand. The room spun slightly, but the hatchling clung to him, steadying him. He felt a mixture of awe and fear. Everything he knew was gone. The galaxy he had trained to serve no longer needed him as a soldier. He was something else entirely. A soft chime drew his attention. Commander Thane walked over to a console and touched it lightly. A small drone floated toward him, projecting an image of a young dragon, full-grown, with wings that gleamed in the light. "This is Kiva," she said. "She is the dragon you saved. She has grown under care and trust, and her presence has changed the way all dragons are treated. They are no longer weapons. They are beings worthy of respect." Relon felt his throat tighten. He had never thought of himself as heroic. He had only followed what his heart told him in that one moment. But now the galaxy recognized that simple choice as monumental. He had saved a life, and that life had saved the galaxy in return. He took a tentative step forward, the hatchling moving in his arms, now clearly more aware, more alive. "So, what happens now?" he asked, voice still uncertain. Commander Thane smiled. "Now," she said, "you adjust. You live. You are not a soldier anymore, but your bond with Kiva, it has power. You have a chance to guide the future, not with orders or weapons, but with trust and compassion. The galaxy has learned that kindness can be stronger than fear." Relon looked out the window. Planets spun slowly, and ships passed silently in the distance. Humans and dragons moved together, not as enemies but as partners. He could see that the galaxy had changed in ways he could barely imagine. And he realized something important. He had not only survived, he had been part of something greater. Kiva nudged him gently with her snout, and he laughed softly, a sound he had not heard in years. "I guess, We really did change everything, didn't we? The dragon blinked at him, and he felt a warmth that had nothing to do with sunlight or heat lamps. It was trust, friendship, and the knowledge that he had made the right choice. Days passed as Relon learned about this new world. He walked among humans and dragons, watching as the two species worked together. Stories were told of the moment he had chosen life over orders, and how that single decision had inspired entire planets to see dragons as more than tools of war. He was no longer a footnote in history, he was a symbol. Yet even with all the accolades and respect, Relon never felt proud in the way soldiers did. He felt humbled. He had not been strong, clever, or powerful. He had simply chosen to care. And in that care he found strength he had never known. One night, Relon sat with Kiva on the edge of a high terrace, looking at the stars. "I never expected this," he said quietly. "I thought I was just doing the right thing, but look at what it led to." Kiva curled her tail around him, eyes glowing softly. It was as if she understood every thought, every word. Together they watched a galaxy that had learned to trust. Relon knew the future would not be easy. Some humans and dragons still doubted each other. Some still held old fears. But he also knew that one small choice, one act of compassion, could ripple across the stars. That knowledge gave him hope. And for the first time in decades he felt ready to face whatever tomorrow held, not as a soldier, but as a human who had chosen life, kindness, and trust over orders. And in the quiet of that changed world, with Kiva beside him, Relon understood the truth. Sometimes the smallest actions create the largest futures. Relon Voss walked slowly through the wide corridors of the new Human Dragon Council Hall, Kiva walking beside him, her small wings folding neatly at her sides. The hall was bright, filled with humans and dragons moving together, speaking quietly and working toward shared goals. For the first time in his life, Relon felt that he belonged in a world not built for war, but for understanding. And yet, despite the calm, he felt a weight pressing on his chest. He had thought that saving Kiva would bring him peace. Instead, it brought responsibility. Every time he walked through the city, people stared, not with fear but with expectation. They looked at him as the man who had chosen compassion over orders, the one who had altered the galaxy. Some whispered admiration, others doubt. Many dragons watched him with curious eyes, some friendly, some wary. Even Kiva seemed to sense it. She nudged him gently with her snout, but he knew she was aware of the attention they drew. At night, Relon often found himself on the terrace of their small dwelling, looking at the stars. Kiva curled at his feet, her scales catching the moonlight, and he would speak to her quietly. "I never asked for this," he said softly. "I just did what I thought was right." Kiva blinked at him, and he felt a warmth in her gaze, a silent understanding that he had never experienced with another human. The council approached him one day with a proposal. They wanted him to take a leadership role, to guide human-dragon relations across the frontier. It was an honor, one that would place him at the center of history, yet it came with a choice. Accepting meant leaving Kiva behind in a special sanctuary, where dragons would be cared for but separated from humans for their own safety. Relon's stomach tightened. The council's plan was logical. They believed that humans and dragons together could sometimes cause tension, that distance would make the bond safer. But he could not imagine leaving Kiva. Not after everything. He refused politely but firmly. "I cannot do this without her," he said. "She trusted me once. I cannot betray that." The council looked surprised. One member spoke softly, "Relon, the galaxy needs you. You can do great things here." He shook his head. "I know. But the greatest thing I can do is stay with the one I chose to protect. If I cannot do that, I am nothing." Kiva shifted closer to him, her small body pressed against his legs, and he felt a renewed sense of determination. Humans could guide the stars, dragons could soar the skies, but their bond, something so fragile, so simple, was stronger than any decree or plan. He realized that the weight he carried was not punishment but a gift. Every day he spent with her, every quiet moment of trust, built strength in both of them. They walked through the city together and people watched with mixed expressions. Some smiled, admiring the gentle bond between human and dragon. Others frowned, worried about the potential risks of such closeness. Relon ignored the whispers. He knew that strength did not always come from force or orders. Sometimes it came from patience, from care, and from choosing to stand beside someone when the world told you not to. Kiva was learning too. Her confidence grew each day. She no longer flinched at crowds or loud noises. When humans spoke, she tilted her head curiously, learning their words. When other dragons passed, she nodded politely, testing her place in the larger world. Relon guided her gently, teaching her not with commands but with example. He shared warmth when she was cold, quiet words when she was anxious, and space when she needed it. The city watched, and slowly dragons and humans began to understand that a bond based on trust could be stronger than any rule or weapon. One evening, Relon and Kiva visited a small park on the edge of the city. Young dragons played with human children, flying in circles, chasing shadows, and laughing in their own way. Kiva stayed close to Relon, watching the joy around her. He knelt beside her, brushing a hand along her scales. "See what your life means?" he said softly. "You are not just alive. You are teaching everyone how to be better, how to care, how to trust." Kiva blinked at him and he laughed quietly. She understood in her way that their bond was powerful. But even with the warmth and quiet joy, Relon could not ignore the challenges. Some humans still feared dragons. Some dragons still distrusted humans. Kiva sometimes reacted to those moments with tension, and Relon would calm her, whispering, "We can do this. We can show them what trust looks like." Slowly, step by step, they did. And with each small success, Relon felt the weight of responsibility become lighter. He realized that leadership did not always require grand battles. Sometimes it required quiet strength, patience, and care. Relon and Kiva became known across the frontier not as heroes of war, but as symbols of what could happen when one human chose life over orders. Stories of their bond spread from world to world. Young humans and dragons imitated them, forming friendships that had once been impossible. Children laughed as dragons flew overhead, mirroring the small dragon's curiosity and warmth. And Relon, who had only wanted to save one fragile life, began to understand that the galaxy itself was learning from him. At night, he would sit again on the terrace, Kiva curled at his side, and he would look at the stars. "It's not easy," he said quietly, "but it's worth it." Kiva pressed her head against his shoulder. "Every day we choose to care," he whispered, "we change something. Not with weapons, not with rules, but just by standing together." Relon understood then that the weight he carried, the responsibility, the attention, the whispers, was not a burden but a gift. He had saved one life, and in doing so he had begun to change the hearts of many. He had discovered that true strength was gentle, patient, and steadfast. And with Kiva beside him, he knew they could face whatever challenges lay ahead, together. For the first time in his life he did not feel alone. He had a companion, a purpose, and a galaxy slowly learning the meaning of trust. And in that quiet, steady bond, Relon found the courage to keep moving forward, not as a soldier, not as a hero, but as a human who had chosen care over orders and love over fear. Relon Voss stood at the edge of the council chamber, Kiva by his side, her golden eyes bright and alert. Outside the wide windows, the sky shimmered with fleets of dragons and human ships, hovering together over the frontier worlds. The council had called an emergency meeting. A disagreement had grown between several dragon enclaves and nearby human settlements. Old fears and old wounds were stirring, and for the first time in many years, the galaxy seemed ready to return to conflict. Relon took a deep breath. He was no longer a soldier, no longer a simple operative following orders. He was something else now, a bridge between species, a living example of what trust and care could accomplish. But he knew speaking would not be easy. Dragons were proud, humans were cautious, and old hatred did not fade overnight. He looked down at Kiva, who nudged his hand gently. Her trust in him was unwavering, and that small gesture gave him courage. When the chamber quieted, he stepped forward. His voice was calm but strong. "I know fear is still here," he began, "and doubt. Some of you believe that dragons cannot trust humans, or that humans cannot honor dragons. I understand. I have felt that fear myself." He paused, letting his words sink in. The chamber was silent, all eyes fixed on him. "I was sent on a mission," he continued, "to follow orders, to take what was necessary and leave. But I found a small dragon, hurt and alone. I chose to save her, even when it meant failing my mission. That choice changed everything." He gestured to Kiva, now standing proudly beside him. "She trusted me. I could have left her, but I did not. And because of that, humans and dragons have learned to see each other differently. We have learned that kindness can be stronger than fear, that trust can hold the galaxy together when weapons cannot." A murmur ran through the chamber. Some humans nodded, some dragons shifted uneasily. Relon did not falter. "This is not just my story. It is a story of what happens when one life is valued. We are all connected. Every choice we make can ripple across the stars. If we listen, if we trust, we can stop hatred before it begins. We can choose life over orders, understanding over anger. One of the elder dragons, large and ancient, spoke next. You speak of trust, human, but how do we know it is true? How do we know you are not swayed by sentiment, by weakness? Relon met the dragon's gaze steadily. Because Kiva is here, he said. Because she trusted me and because she is alive today. Not as a weapon, not as a prize, but as a being who feels and learns. If one life can be protected, then many can be. If one bond can exist, then others can grow. The chamber grew quiet again. Relon could feel the weight of the moment. He did not need to shout or threaten or prove himself with power. His words, simple and honest, carried farther than any fleet of ships or council decree. Kiva stepped closer, tilting her head, her eyes shining. The room seemed to hold its breath. Let her presence remind you, Relon said softly, that strength is not in domination or fear or weapons. Strength is in compassion. Strength is in choosing life when it is easier to follow orders. We have a choice today. We can fight old battles or we can create new beginnings. I choose the latter, and I ask you to consider it too. A younger dragon, one of the first to learn from humans in this new age, stepped forward. He speaks the truth, it said. I have seen humans care for dragons. I have seen dragons care for humans. That care is stronger than fear. That care is stronger than anger. Let us listen. Others began to nod. Slowly the chamber shifted. Old grudges and old tension did not vanish immediately, but something new took root. The council listened, the dragons listened, the humans listened. Relon could feel it, a quiet hope spreading across the room, fragile but real. When the meeting ended, Relon and Kiva stepped out into the open terrace. The city beyond stretched under the stars, peaceful but alive with energy. Ships and dragons moved together, humans walking beside dragons in a way that had once been impossible. He looked at Kiva, who lifted her wings slightly and chirped softly. She seemed to smile, proud of what they had accomplished. You see, Relon whispered. We are not just small beings in a big galaxy. We matter. One life, one choice, one bond, it can change everything. Kiva pressed her head against his chest as if to confirm his words. For the first time since he had awakened, Relon felt the full weight of what he had done. Not just saving Kiva but showing the galaxy that choices mattered. That kindness mattered. That one person could make a difference. In the days that followed, peace talks began to move faster, guided by example rather than fear. Dragons and humans started to work on joint projects, rebuilding old settlements together. Children watched in wonder as dragons soared overhead, and humans laughed beside them, sharing games and stories. The galaxy, once on the edge of conflict again, began to feel the first threads of lasting harmony. Relon never took credit. He did not need to. His reward was seeing Kiva grow, seeing humans and dragons begin to trust each other, and feeling the quiet knowledge that his choice, made years ago in a dark station, had echoed across the stars. Every life he touched, every bond he nurtured, became a small proof that the galaxy could learn and change. At night, Relon sat with Kiva on the terrace looking at the stars. We did it, he said softly. Not with weapons, not with force. Just by standing together. Kiva blinked slowly, resting her head on his shoulder. The galaxy listened, he realized. It was finally learning that trust, compassion, and choice mattered more than fear. And Relon knew that no matter what challenges came next, they could face them, together. The stars stretched endlessly before them, and for the first time in decades, Relon felt a calm certainty. He had found his place not as a soldier or a hero, but as a human who chose life, who chose trust, who chose a small dragon over a mission, and had helped the galaxy hear a new voice. Relon Voss walked slowly through the quiet streets of the new world he now called home, Kiva by his side. The city had grown over the years, built not just for humans or dragons but for both. Homes were shaped to fit wings and tails as easily as hands and feet. Gardens floated above streets, tended by humans and dragons alike. Everywhere he looked, he saw life thriving not because of force or orders, but because of trust and care. Kiva's scales glimmered in the sunlight, now full-grown, strong and elegant. She had grown larger than he remembered, but her eyes held the same gentle curiosity and warmth from the first day he had rescued her. Children ran past them, laughing as tiny dragons swooped overhead, practicing the games Relon and Kiva had once shared. People waved to him as he passed, not because of titles or rank, but because he had chosen differently once, and that choice had shaped their lives. Relon stopped at a small park, the same place where he had first realized the depth of their bond. He knelt and Kiva nudged him gently with her snout. You see this, Kiva? He said softly. All of this, it's because of one small choice. One life saved. Who would have thought that would lead here? She blinked at him and he smiled, feeling the quiet pride of having guided her, having nurtured something greater than either of them alone. The council had offered him honors, awards and positions, but Relon refused most of them. Statues had been built in his honor on distant planets, but he never visited them. He kept only one thing from his past: his old coat, worn and scorched from the mission that had changed everything. He hung it by his door, a reminder that one simple choice could ripple across the galaxy, far beyond what anyone could imagine. Humans and dragons now worked together everywhere. New schools taught children both human and dragon history. Young dragons learned the words of humans, and young humans learned the songs of dragons. Relon watched from a distance sometimes, seeing the joy, the laughter and the bonds forming, knowing he had played a part. But he did not see himself as a hero. He had only chosen to care. That had been enough. One day, a delegation arrived from a distant system where dragons and humans had never met peacefully. They had heard of Relon and Kiva, of the story of the hatchling saved in the ruins, and of the ripple it had caused. They came with questions, with doubts and even fear. Relon greeted them with the same quiet patience he had shown Kiva years ago. He did not speak of glory. He spoke of trust, of choices, of small acts of care. Kiva stood beside him, calm and strong. Together they showed the visitors what was possible. Slowly, doubt melted into curiosity, and fear softened into hope. Relon felt the same lesson repeating itself: change does not come from force. It comes from patience, kindness, and the courage to choose life when the world expects you to follow orders. Every dragon that had once feared humans, every human that had once doubted dragons, now had a chance to see that the galaxy could be better. And it all began with one small dragon, trembling in a broken pod, and one human who refused to leave her behind. At night, Relon sat on the terrace with Kiva watching the stars. The city below was quiet now, but he could hear the distant laughter of children, the soft hum of dragons, and the calm of a galaxy learning to live in harmony. "We made it," he whispered, running a hand along Kiva's scaled back. She pressed her head against his shoulder as if to say yes. Together they had not only survived, they had taught the galaxy to care, to trust, and to hope. He remembered the first day he had chosen Kiva over orders, the moment when the mission timer had ended and his life had shifted forever. Back then he had not known what would come. He had only known that leaving her would have been wrong. Now, decades later, he saw the truth. The smallest act of courage can create the greatest change. People often asked him why he stayed with Kiva, why he had refused positions of power and honor. His answer was always simple: because she trusted me. And because I chose to protect life instead of following orders. That is enough. And in the way she looked at him, he could see she agreed. Relon often walked along the floating gardens above the city with Kiva, talking quietly to each other. Dragons soared above, humans tended plants and fountains, and the sun set in colors that seemed brighter than ever before. The world they had shaped together was alive with hope, laughter, and trust. No one was perfect and there were still challenges, but they faced them together, learning and growing side by side. One evening, Relon met a young human girl and her dragon companion. The girl looked at Kiva in awe. "Did you do all this?" she asked, eyes wide. Relon smiled and shook his head. "No," he said softly. "We did it together. One choice at a time." The girl nodded, understanding more than words could say. Kiva curled around Relon, and the young dragon nuzzled the girl gently. The cycle of trust and care continued, passing from one generation to the next. Relon knew then that he had witnessed something rare. The galaxy had changed not because of fleets or weapons, not because of wars won or lost, but because one human had chosen compassion. Kiva, once small and trembling, had become a symbol of hope. And together, they had shown the universe that life, care, and trust were more powerful than fear. As the stars stretched endlessly above them, Relon whispered to Kiva, "We did not just survive, little one. We changed everything." She blinked slowly, golden eyes shining, and he understood that she knew. The future they had dreamed of, the world that had seemed impossible, was real. And it was theirs to enjoy, to protect, and to share with the generations to come. Relon felt peace in a way he had never imagined. He had chosen a small dragon over a mission, and in doing so, he had woken to a future that no one had thought possible. A future full of hope, life, and warmth. And as Kiva curled beside him, he knew that whatever came next, they would face it together, and the galaxy would continue to learn the meaning of trust and compassion, one choice at a time.